Thank you so much for accepting this challenge. And today, I really invite you to talk about important subject for the people, especially who are from post-Soviet Union country, and I will explain you why. And the second, how we can support them, giving them tips, because knowing what you are doing, how you support the people specifically working in non-profit organizations. So briefly what I'm saying, first, I read your article in LinkedIn, and I thought that, oh, seems to me it's not only the subject which I think about. Seems to me there are other sides of this one, because why other sides? You know that I am doing coaching. So I have now a lot of people from Ukraine who's actually subscribed formally, and I'm giving them all the possible support through coaching, opening their internal power, internal strengths that they can use. And coaching, is completely different than psychological support. I face a lot of queries related that I can't talk, I can't brag. It looks like, oh, it's terrible for me. I know they're great, they're professionals. And now I will say more, a little bit intro. First of all, Ukraine is upper middle income country. Second, 100% of literacy rate. Third, this is specificity. We are so connected with babushka, with grandparents, and we used to live with them and we accept their values of life. And next one is the world is really evolving and changing. Working in commercial companies, it's great because you can show the sales, and then it's great. You can even not talk about it. You just show your work and you get the promotion. But for non-profit, it's terribly difficult, what I found. First of all, investments. It's not investments, it's more spendings. Second is difficult to show the result, because for social projects, for non-for-profit, you need longer time. Third one, assessment is very subjective, what I found. You can't just take the volume of expenditures, how much money you spent.
Right.
And second, you can't say that there is no 6 months outstanding DCT. So that's why for those who cannot, in a short period of time, showing their work, and I believe in Ukraine specifically, we have a lot of professional national staff, and they can do their job very high quality, but the problem to show off. And then when you don't know how to show off, then your boss, supervisor might think that you're not so effective. And in any meetings, we clearly see those who talks, and those who actually works, but they keep silent because of many reasons.
Right.
And in coaching queries, I have a lot of such kind of things. I know I have to show off. I know I did it with my hands, but I can't. I feel like, embarrassing. How it would be possible? It's, come on, I did my job. But, then we can compare others, let's say, who come to work with us in the same, building. And I critically see them that for even small win, they are mustered to show off it nicely.
Yeah.
And then when I read your article, I understood that not only for coaching queries, but also for psychological staff counseling and support, you might also face the same situations. So today, that's why I call you to a little bit expand the subject. And maybe this is one of the first of our next meetings, because the subject is very deep. And I want you to unpack a bit the real situation, what's happening, let's say, the culture of Ukrainians who actually, we have some connections with, I said. The third one, what mostly you faced, you met, and then we come to the recommendations. So over to you, and it's great if we can start this discussion, and I believe that other people will also join us in the wider communication. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Bahadir, for raising this topic, because this is one of my professional interests, and from my experience working as a staff counselor or staff support professional in different capacities, what I can see is you cannot imagine how many people experience what we now call imposter syndrome. How many people come for these conversations looking for support that say, you know, I have so many ideas that seem to be great, and I think we could do that. We can actually, you know, improve projects, improve processes, etc., etc. But they don't feel comfortable raising those ideas because of the number of internal, let's say, processes that they have. And when we talk about people from Ukraine, from other neighboring countries that are coming from a very specific culture, I would say it's even more because culture contributes greatly to our internal processes, our inner beliefs, but also the way we see world and our place in this world. So yeah, happy to join this conversation, and maybe I hope that people that will watch our discussion today, they will already gain some better understanding and will be able to, you know, to deal with it at least in some way, to make more steps towards their careers, towards their passions, you know. Because when I think that, can you imagine how different the world could be if people didn't have imposter syndrome? And all of the ideas that they just set aside and hide in a box somewhere in the wardrobe, if they would actually come to happening, we could have way more technologies, we could have way more social justice, we could have been more developed as a society globally, in general. So I would really love to contribute to this process, to helping people, you know, to think better about their own abilities and be braver in actually coming up and voicing their ideas and offering their services to people.
Great. This is really amazing. And before coming to the subject of deeper discussion, I just wanted to ask, what has actually led you to write this short article in Greenskin? What
Right.
was the cause and reason?
Right. So, honestly, I am one of the people that experience quite a severe imposter syndrome. So I'm dealing with it for my entire life. And at some point, I started thinking, okay, I have quite a significant imposter syndrome. And at the same time, I am lucky to have this amazing career where I work internationally, and somehow I'm able to overcome, you know, all these challenges that I have to face internally most of the time. And it would be great to elaborate on this topic because I think it doesn't receive enough attention publicly. There are some professionals that speak about it, but I think there's way more to say about it, and there's way more to understand for people about it. So yeah, here it is, and here's the article, and here's our conversation.
Super. So means that you actually, may I say, suffered as
Of
the
course I
patient
do. Of
of
course I
imposter
do.
syndrome? It's
Yeah.
amazing. I have the same problem. Sorry to say, even nobody can actually detect it, but yeah, it takes a lot of my efforts to
Right.
go and I have to really, go through it. But we will come to that stage. And can you give examples? But no, first I want to ask you, what as a psychologist you can clearly see, let's say, three main roots why this
Hmm.
imposter syndrome is actually developed. Is it because of the school? Is it because of the, I don't know, grandparents? Is it
Mm.
because of your family education? Or what?
Right.
Because
So,
now
yeah.
is the results what I see is amazing. You having the nice career. So
Hmm.
first, that's why if you can tell about the possible or your personal roots, and then a bit
Hmm.
explore what exactly in Ukraine might be a reason of
Yeah.
still handing over through generations this imposter.
Right. So there's never just one root cause for the imposter syndrome. It's always a combination. And I see imposter syndrome as a form of social anxiety. And social anxiety is a clinical term, and imposter syndrome is not a clinical term. It's not a diagnosis. So basically, when we say syndrome, what do we mean by that? Is that it's a number of symptoms that often occur together, but they are not strong enough, or they are not like as many as we need to qualify that for a diagnosis, like social anxiety, for instance. But this is a very standalone form of social anxiety. So when we look at it from this perspective, there's always the biological part. So basically, the predisposition for anxiety. People that experience generally more anxiety are prone to have an imposter syndrome, but this does not mean that they will definitely have it. So then what comes next is their upbringing. So basically, the family, the extended family, the friends of their parents, and this small social group culture, and then also the national culture of the place they were, growing at. So when we talk about the upbringing, this is a very interesting thing, is that both ways can contribute to the imposter syndrome. On one side, there can be parents that were always saying, you don't have any talent, please do not stand out, please stay quiet, like you have no capacity to do anything, you're not so smart, you are dumb, etc., etc. So the person that is growing in this environment and they're hearing these ideas from the very early age, they grow up with this perception of themselves as someone who is not capable. So when they have an idea, something, we can do this. And then this internal voice comes and says, you're not capable. This idea is most definitely so stupid that everyone will laugh now, or they will criticize you because you are not able to create an interesting idea just because of how incapable you are. So this is one side. And there is another side of the spectrum where the person grows in a family, and they hear on a daily basis how talented they are, how amazing they are, how smart they are, how capable they are. And then they feel very special, when they hear those compliments and comments, they feel very special. And of course, it contributes to the confidence. And then they, let's say, apply to a very prestigious university and they get accepted, or they apply to a very prestigious job and they get accepted. And what happens there is they see other people that are as capable as they are, sometimes even more talented, and they start thinking, my parents were lying to me. I can obviously see that everyone else is at least the same smart as I am, is at least the same talented that I am. So I have nothing special about me. So and then they often have this, what I call filter, through which they see the world, and it's like all or nothing filter, or cognitive distortion. We can name it also. So it's, if I'm not the best, means I am the worst. So I can either be the best or the worst. There is nothing in between. So having this idea and then facing the situation where they are not the best, or at least not as good as they were told through their life, leads them to the opposite side of this idea. If I'm not the best, then I'm the worst. And if I'm the worst, of course I will not be applying for the upper positions. Of course I will not be, sharing these ideas that I have. Of course I will not stand out, and I will not even comment during the team meetings, because I don't want people to see the same that I see, that I'm actually the worst, right? So this would be about the upbringing. And then the next level would be the national culture of the upbringing. Is like when we speak about the Ukrainian culture, and I think for many neighboring countries, it would be very similar. Um, when people were constantly told that you should not stand out. Because historically, when you were standing out, you were at risk of being, killed, kidnapped, etc., etc. Because in Soviet Union, the government didn't like people that stand out. Everyone had to be the same. So basically, standing out equals danger, equals life threat. And this is the generational trauma that we pass to the next generations, to our children, and then they pass to their children, without even questioning whether this is still true or not, right? So I remember once I was sitting in the beauty salon, I was doing my hair, and there was a woman sitting in the next chair, and she was telling the story about her friends, that they have a kid who is playing football. And she was saying that they invest so much money in his training, and they invest so much time in him becoming a football player. And then her comment, just, I was just shocked when I heard that. She said, why would they even do that? Who needs a guy from Ukrainian small town? Like, nobody will be interested in him. And I immediately thought to myself, like, oh my God, poor her children, because they have no chance to be brave enough to apply for some really cool jobs. And how lucky that little boy that I never met is to have his parents that actually invest in his future and that actually believe in his capability, right? So culturally, like with this generational trauma, but also with this idea, where is Ukraine and where is the big world? Where is, I don't know, Armenia and where is this big world? Where is, I don't know, any other country like Kyrgyzstan or any other, right? And there's this big world, right? So we see ourselves as somewhat separated from these success stories, because what we see is people are getting successful somewhere in United States, somewhere in Germany, somewhere in Switzerland, etc., etc. So we don't feel that there is a bridge between our culture and their culture, right? So it really takes a lot of effort to break this internal cycle, to at least apply for the positions and then compete for them, to get the job. But then at the same time, I can see so many Ukrainians now working globally, and they succeed. They have like really awesome jobs. They bring a lot of value to their companies because they are resilient, they are intelligent, they are smart. And when you mention that Ukraine is an upper middle income country, is something that is still surprising for many. I am currently located in United States, and what I see here, people very often, I'm not saying that everyone, but very often people still think that we are a very underdeveloped country. Like, oh, do you have universities? Oh, like, do you have like this expensive cars? Like, how come is that possible? And they very often do not understand that people that had to flee the country because of the war, they were not escaping the poverty. They were escaping the bombs and the war, but they are still very educated. They are still very experienced, sometimes way more experienced and educated than people in the country they arrived to. So I think this is also about the global culture, perceiving our culture as something that is very underdeveloped. And we have to invest in promoting ourselves as capable. And we have to put a lot of effort to inform people about who we actually are. So coming from the internal processes and up to the global processes, it all works together to lead people feeling they are not capable enough.
Yes, this is really interesting, and I can really confirm from my childhood. For instance, in school, I rejected mark 4. I said either 5 or 2. If she put the
Yeah,
2, I mean my teacher, then I come and redo my all the exercises and
yeah,
show off. So I graduated with awards to school. So I graduated with awards to university medical. So that's why sometimes I maybe try to utilize it in my good. But the point is
right.
the next question. It's really interesting how you actually classified and showed, but how you first understood. You are a psychologist, but imagine you are not.
Yeah,
How you understood that you have this imposter? Is it
yeah,
possible to lay person, I don't know, to young person, sometimes anyway, understand, okay, and here's the situation, and that is actually my challenge, and I cannot overcome it and get the position and get promotion and
right.
get the things what I want. Even in the United States, I know that people prefer to feel self-confident even they are not educated. They behave, they behave like they
Right.
have top of everything, all the skills in the world is possible. And definitely this is one of their problem. But we are coming back to you. And I know that situation with imposter also impacts the personal life. A girl or a boy cannot get know each other or expand the network because they believe I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't have Hollywood face, and that comes also impacting on personal life. But my question to you, imagine you are not psychologist, you are not so super trained, but how you can recommend, of course, maybe you find yourself that you have this syndrome,
Hmm.
and then how you recommend to diagnose, let's say, but it's not a diagnose, let's say to distinguish, to understand
Yeah.
that this imposter is actually inside of your blood. And then this is
Right.
the first step when you can recognize it.
So basically, the main things to look out for is that you are afraid to express yourself and your expertise because you think that people will give you a feedback that you're not as professional as you are. So the idea behind the imposter syndrome is that I don't actually have a good expertise, and even if I'm at a nice job, I am here because I was lucky to get here, or I'm here because they did not recognize during the interview how basic I am, or I'm here because someone helped me to get here. You know, I had this amazing conversation with my former supervisor, and I said, like, I'm so lucky to have this job of mine, and I'm very lucky just because I was able to meet like some certain people that kind of referred me to this position, and then I was able to, to get the job. And he looked at me and he said, no, you have this job because you were the best during the interview process, not because you were lucky or because you were referred by someone. And it really struck me at that moment, even though I was already a qualified psychologist, and still I was getting into this trap of me simply being lucky to get a certain job, right? And then, so basically recognizing this idea, so I'm not applying or I'm not voicing my idea, so I'm not promoting my services because I genuinely think that I am an imposter, that I do not in fact know what I say I know, that I am not in fact able to do the function I try to convince people that I do. And it says a lot also about this person's values because it's about them trying to be ethical. It's about them trying to be respectful towards people that are buying their services. But at the same time, these values, they lay on this foundation of a very false perception of themselves, right? Um, in a day-to-day situations, like imagine you are in a work meeting and you want to give a comment on something, and then your entire body gets tensed, and then you are not able to say a word because you think that everyone will turn around to you now and think, oh my God, how on earth he even here, right? So the idea of own incapability is in the foundation of that, and in daily situations, it manifests in the shape of anxiety, muscle tension, increased heartbeat. You can like feel that the world is getting blurry, etc., etc. And then when you are out of this situation where you wanted to give a comment or express your opinion or share your idea, you are fine immediately.
So still there is a sign maybe for someone who is actually cannot talk. Even he or she went through all the necessary trainings and is actually he get the position not because he is lucky, he or she lucky. And this is
Yeah.
definitely thanks to a supervisor that he or she, whatever, said about it to you, and it actually gives you a bit more confidence that you are the right person in the right place because you
But
have confidence, right? And
yeah, but not
competence.
everyone is lucky to have such a mindful supervisor at work, right? Who can give them this kind of feedback. Very often people are not very, they don't have this level of emotional intelligence to recognize that things, and they really perceive their team members through the lens of their ability to promote themselves. I was lucky enough at one point to observe the very interesting situation that also gave me a lot of understanding about the imposter syndrome. I remember it was a work meeting of the quite a big team, maybe like approximately 30 people. So they were one after another, they were sharing sort of the ideas how to approach a certain situation. So everyone was sharing, and then there was this girl who started by, I have this idea, but I'm not sure whether it's good or not, but I will just, just say it and you tell me if it's worth attention, blah, blah, blah. And then she's giving this idea. And the manager is like, nah, this bullshit. No, no, I'm not going into that one. Next one. So they go to the next person, to the next person. And then at the very end, there is this girl who is very self confident. And she says, like, she starts by, I have this brilliant idea. I think it will fix all of our problems because it's just genius. And she's giving the same exact idea as this girl at the beginning that said that she's not sure if it's a good idea or not. And then when she finished expressing the same idea, and I was shocked that people did not even understand that this is the very same idea, and the manager says, oh, now we have a great idea. Finally, someone came up with something like that. And I looked at this first girl, and she was like, what's happening? I just said the same and I was dismissed immediately. So there are still managers that unfortunately perceive the capabilities of their team members through their ability to promote themselves, to basically be their own PR managers. And whilst this is still a very important skill in any business environment, but still I think it's very important for managers to be able to recognize good ideas apart from the way they are being promoted, because I think with this approach we are losing really a lot of great things that can be done.
Yes, thank you so much. We went to the second, I mean, the next part, not second.
Right.
And the first part, I wanted just to make a summary from your side. So let's say your recommendations. If
Okay.
this is a formula, if I feel that I cannot talk, I'm not talking about the people like in Dunning-Kruger syndrome, symptom, whatever. They so overconfident in the things they're not confident at all. So you know it. We will just skip it. Imagine that the average person in Ukraine is actually has the skills which allowed him or her to join the non-profit organization I will tell
Right.
that including UN, whatever. I'm talking specifically about non-profit, because for profit it's easy. Even you just do your job, you increase the sales, as I mentioned. But for non-profit is absolutely, I believe, is subjective. So imagine if you are in such agency and you start worrying, saying something, giving advices, is it possible to start thinking that it might be imposter syndrome? And if it's completely increase your anxiety, is it the imposter syndrome one of the? Of course, there may be so many. And is it the good way to come to you and start talking about it just to make sure that this is not the disease, anxiety coming through depression or whatever, and antidepressants no needed, but this is exactly what you said: culture, family education, points, grow up all the time, feeling of incapability, a lot of other things. Do you think that these two steps is great? First, understand that it might be an increasing anxiety during the meeting saying something, and is it a good way if we have staff counselor, let's say, or psychologists like you, to come to you and start talking about it?
Right. It's always a good idea to talk to a counselor when you are unsure about what's happening with you. But I think it's the easiest way. We start by recognizing, by becoming mindful of what is actually happening to my body, to my emotions, to my behaviors, how certain situations change the way I think and the way I act, right? And then by recognizing a certain pattern that's happening over and over in different occasions, then you reach out to a professional that can help you with that. Of course, I think that imposter syndrome is something that people potentially can overcome by themselves. But when I say overcome, it doesn't mean that they will not feel like that anymore. But it means that they will still be able to grow their careers and express their ideas despite their feelings. But I think together with the professional, it will be much faster and much more easy than doing it on your own. There are a number of books on imposter syndrome. There are a number of approaches that counselors and psychologists and coaches are using now to help people deal with that. But always with a certain professional, it's easier and faster to go this to walk this journey.
Yes, I understand. So the bottom line here, and this is like a recommendation for our colleagues working in the same environment, feel, can I say like this? Do you feel any anxiety when you want to say something or propose something or express your opinion or not? And if it's happening many times, then you might have imposter syndrome. Can we say like
Right.
this, like a summary on that?
Well, we can and we cannot at the same time, because being afraid of saying something publicly is not always tied to imposter syndrome. It can be a severe social anxiety. It can be like it can manifest for people when they are afraid. Like, for instance, imagine someone's in the bus and they need to ask a driver to stop on the bus stop, but their social anxiety is so severe that they are not able to ask for a stop, and they have to travel way like a very big distance, and then walk back, right? So this would be very similar. But when we speak about imposter syndrome, I am not speaking up, not because I'm afraid to speak up, but because I am thinking that my idea is very stupid and people will actually now understand who am I in real life, right? So this is a very specific idea that in fact I am not capable as people think I am, right?
Yes, I understand now. This is very important, as you said, just to make sure. But anyway, for the layperson, it's difficult. I have a medical background, and definitely I can check my pulse, understand this, understand
Right.
that. and make connections, and more than 15 years of clinical experience in different settings. You are professional, definitely, and we give more or less scientific explanations of the situation. But the person, imagine engineer, I mean, the 10 years or 5 years work in I don't know, in engineering company, and then always work hard and nice, and then step into the non-profit agency, including UN. Yeah, just summarizing it. And then he starts working and seeing the all, terrible things, miscalculations, but still he feels that maybe this is super
Yeah.
people works in such organizations, and they're so, I mean, educated. That's why they get this P5, P10, P11, whatever is there.
Right.
And I'm not capable to say to them, because they're for him as the big people, and specifically
Right.
first day of work. So in that scenario, is it possible for him or her to anyway give the tips on diagnosing, on understanding that you are okay, but because of that you keep. So I just want you to come to the like a summary of the first part,
Right.
where you can say if you have A, B, C, and D,
Right.
not in the bus, you are around the table in a work meeting, on, I don't know, any types of meetings or discussion one on one with your supervisor. In that scenario, is there any formula you can
Yeah.
recommend
Yeah.
to take care to look at?
Yeah, so I would suggest observing three dimensions: the cognitive part, the emotional part, and the behavioral part. So the cognitive part would be always about I am not good enough at what I do in my work, and people still think I am good, but I think I am not. The emotional would be anxiety raising in a very specific situations where I have to express myself as a professional, not everywhere, but specifically as a professional. And then the behavioral part would be that I tend to always or very often um, stay silent during the meetings. I have those ideas, I get like excited about them, but the next day I just decide not to share those ideas with the certain people that I should be doing that. So basically, I'm just trying to stay invisible. So this would be the behavioral part. So three parts: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral.
Indeed, this is true. Today I had like a coaching session with the person. I mean, I think I had two. One of them said, I said, you are capable of to go through to apply for P positions, be international. And the guy said, yes, because you work here, you did A, you B, C. Actually, I worked with that person some times ago. And he said, yes, yes, still I'm doing it, I'm doing it. And they're putting more, and I'm taking it, and I'm doing it. But then I think I'm not ready, but I'm not that person. I still require more time to apply for international positions. I
Right.
said, why? And he said, I feel that it's not good way that I start to showing off myself, that I'm capable to do the international professional
Mm.
job. And he strongly believes. Second one, super engineer, worked also geodesy. This is the science of water finding, pumping, whatever. He did a lot of this job, and not, and he lost the job,
Mm-hmm.
and he can't say anything, and the formulation was really terrible. And that person also suffers with imposter syndrome. Whatever I tried to open his mind and saying that here are your capabilities and you can really sell it,
Right.
but he still don't believe, saying that is not enough. And guy comes to 50 years old already with a huge experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we face it a lot. And what I will use definitely what you explain now to continue. I have his next sessions with him. So I will try to give him this kind of direction, saying that maybe this is imposter syndrome, and it's good way you meet with psychologists maybe and go through that specific introacts, which is
Right.
inside of your brain, your mind, which is actually stopping you to develop yourself. So
Right.
thank you so much. This is really really important, and it's great that you also had in your life. Now we come to the next step. It is also interesting. What is urgent, emergency, fast acting things which you can recommend for the staff member to overcome it without support. But let's say the person already done this imposter syndrome. Is there any hotkeys which
Mm,
he or she
mm.
can really use just to try go out of this cage?
Yeah, this is a very common thing for people to request very quick step. What I can do very quickly, but it's not always quick steps is something good to do. Because with the imposter syndrome, like with any other mental health challenge, let's say, or well-being challenge or self-confidence, it's really important to understand first what is happening inside and what was the mechanism behind someone developing that, but also what supports the existence of this phenomenon at this very moment. Because imagine, I will use the metaphor of a forest fire. Imagine the forest fire started and there is a very strong wind. So if firefighters come to this the place to this forest and they do not consider that there is a wind and they just start trying to stop the fire, it will continue expanding. And when they consider that there is a wind, they will first do the actions to stop the fire from spreading, and then they will start using water, etc. So the same thing with anything that's related to our internal processes. It's highly important to understand what is supporting what is happening with the person at the moment and break those cycles first, and then go deeper into understanding those ideas and challenging those internal ideas about themselves and the world around them. But if you're talking about the first step that the person can take in order to deal with the imposter syndrome, is that act despite the fear. Because there is a very common misconception that to be able to act, I need to feel 100% confident in what I'm saying, but you don't. Actually, I don't think I know any person that feels 100% confident in what they are saying, and at the same time, they are very healthy personalities, I would say. So basically, all people have doubts. Intelligent people have doubts all the time, which doesn't mean that if you have doubts, that your idea is bad. And sharing these ideas, despite the fear, is the first step to break the cycle of the imposter syndrome. Because what's happening is that there are two ways people try to cope. So people develop quite an unhealthy coping with imposter syndrome that actually, in fact, keeps them stuck in this this phenomenon. The first thing is that they are procrastinating till the very last moment, and then they don't have enough time to prepare well, and then they perform not very well. And this idea of, okay, this means that I'm really not capable, it kind of gets confirmed. Or there is another way. People are over preparing. They spend nights and weeks and they really spend too much time. And then when they perform well, they think, okay, so I achieved this result simply because I really put a lot of effort, which confirms that without this effort, I'm actually not very capable person or professional, right? So both these ideas, they are on the opposite sides of the spectrum, but both of them kind of help this imposter syndrome to continue existing. So it's important to start by understanding what is my coping with it. So whether it's a procrastination and I tend to step back and decide not to say something, etc., etc., Or maybe I express my idea, but then when I have to present it publicly, I spend weeks and then I am tired and I'm exhausted and my brain is not functioning well. And then when I am actually able to manage the task, then it confirms that it's just because of the effort. By recognizing the pattern, people become they get enabled to break the pattern. So they either try and change their behavior in terms of procrastination, or they spend much less time preparing to a certain task, and they approach it as a scientific experiment. So let's see what happens if I do this. Let's see what happens if I don't spend 3 weeks preparing the presentation and I only spend 2 days preparing the presentation. Will it be much worse as I expect, or maybe it will actually work out well? So giving yourself the space to explore and challenge the internal ideas that you have about yourself and your capability. And by challenging these ideas through these behavioral experiments, people can reconsider the way they see themselves. But one experiment is not enough. People have to practice it over and over again in order to build the necessary, neuron connections and those ideas like, okay, because if you do it once, then you may think maybe it was just luck. I was lucky again, this common idea of the imposter syndrome. But then you experiment once again, and then you do it once again. And then when you do it like 10 times, you cannot say it was just because you were lucky, right? When you see the pattern, it helps you to logically deconstruct these internal beliefs about your own incapability.
That is interesting, and I clearly hear the voice of psychologists, definitely. And definitely, you cannot reject the knowledge and skills you gain through your education, work, consultations, and definitely. But really, I want to go down to the person without that, let's say, GS star, whatever, and the stuff which actually comes to the a bit maybe not lower level, but different functions. Can we, for instance, advise like a formula? And today we talk
Right.
about only the holder of imposter syndrome. Next time we will talk about the other things, which is amazingly interesting, will be for you also. I will not disclose it now. Can we say that if every day you do your job and you don't have any outstanding situations and you do it nicely, clearly, and you respond to these minimum standards which organizations said, which I said like payments, I don't know, monitoring missions, whatever is needed. We have like a set of performance indicators. We call it performance, and then we put it there. Is it might be accepted as the first sign that you are not imposter, and luck is just occasional, and you're doing every day your job, and because of your job, everything smoothly goes, and the job flow is actually there. And if you
Mm.
disappear, sick, or I don't know, moved somewhere in a short time, whatever is happening, the job is actually hicking up.
Mm-hmm.
Can
Well,
we accept it like this?
it's important to understand, Bahadir, that no matter how many times you will tell this person that they are capable, they will never believe you. The brain and this internal imposter will always find the explanation to confirm the internal bias. You're saying that just because you're polite. You're saying that because you kind of like me as a person and you want me to succeed, but you just don't know me good enough. You're saying that because
Excuse,
you want to,
always excuse, yes?
yes, you're saying that because you want something from me, in return. So the brain will always find the reason behind these words in favor of continuing to believe into this imposter idea. So it's very important to challenge the internal beliefs. And what I was telling you, those experiments, little experiments, anyone can do that. You don't have to go to a counselor or to a therapist. You have just to notice what's happening in your head in these situations, like for example, I'm not voicing my idea, I got stuck, my muscles got tensed. What's something in my head at this moment? What do I think about myself? I'm not capable, I'm a fraudster, it's just pure luck that I'm here, my ideas are always stupid, etc., etc. And when you're able to catch this idea, you're able to challenge it. And there are numerous of ways to challenge it, to see, like to look back to your past. Where is there something that confirms this idea? Is there something that says the opposite, right? What's something that's happening now? Or like, can I consider checking this idea if it's true? Can I consider like coming up with an actual experiment and act in a different way and see what happens next? So you
I
don't
want
have
the
to be a
can.
psychologist for that.
I understand. This is amazing. So in certain time, I really dream of having, Audacity tablet. This is just
Right.
to take it, and doing
Yeah.
like this. But this is terrible because if you got imposter syndrome from your childhood growing up together with you, it's highly unlikely that you will have this audacity and be brazen, like bam, bam,
Yeah.
bam, like a hooligan. Sometimes I really wanted to be like them, don't care about anything else, just do whatever they do and be,
They do care, Bahadir. They do care. It's just their way of coping with their own anxiety as well. So when
yes,
you
it's
see
true.
someone who is overconfident, it's always the story behind that. They're doing that
Hypercompensation.
because of something.
Yes. And now, as the next recommendation, I understand that this is actually the mind situation. You're stuck in your imposter mind. And the second one, for instance, how about to him or her to start exploring and talking, giving advices, and being active with peers? I'm not
Hmm.
talking about now in front of supervisor, but I'm talking
Right.
about like a peers. And when you start articulating, giving advices, and your advices is actually great work, and later on you might turn
Hmm.
to source person who is actually
Right.
can support and give. How about that approach? One more time, we are in this nonprofit organization every day and sometimes twice a week or once we have meetings, then smaller section meetings, whatever is there. So how about to start, for instance, moving through that direction?
Right. I think it's a good idea. And the exercise I would suggest to a person in this situation would be to write down the list of all situations where they experience the imposter syndrome and then rate them depending on the stress level, 0 to 10, let's say. And then build a ladder from the least stressful to the most stressful, and then start from something that's on the level of 3, because if you start from the situation that's on the level 1 or 2, it won't really help you to reconsider your ideas. But something where stress is a little bit higher and it's already a bit difficult to deal with that, like for instance, advising to peers could be there, and then you see what happens next. And once you get comfortable with that level, then you get to the next one. And then when you get comfortable with the next one, you get to the following one. So this is a very common CBT exercise that we use in many cases of social anxiety, but I believe that for the imposter syndrome, it's as effective, and it's a really good approach that won't lead you through a very stressful path. So you don't have to go public and announce something, etc. You just start where is a little bit challenging for you and you overcome it.
That is amazing. And today we went through several steps, as you see. First of all, we recognized what is that imposter syndrome is widely spread, and it's thanks God that it's going down. But anyway, still because of our cultural relations with the previous generation, and we still accept them, we love them first of all, and that's why they influence us. Like grandparents, we stay when we're 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, and we might have some kind of expressions coming from the past Soviet Union era, as you said. Second, we talk about how he or she can recognize that, oh, it might be imposter syndrome. I'm not talking about anxiety, I'm not talking about the other diseases, but the condition, the mind condition, which blocking. Third, we talk about the areas how it is possible to explore coming to the staff counselor and feeling something wrong to just understand whether it is the psychological psychiatric condition or this is real mind condition which could be managed on the job settings. So then we talk about the different approaches which the person, he or she, staff member can really look at and try to overcome it through certain interventions, including recognition, understanding, talking to peers, starting with small steps just to go through it. And this is, I believe, the first basic important subject which we need to explore. For today is actually that was my direction to talk about, because the next one I have a lot of queries about how then to interact with supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the lot of questions, especially for those who is actually suffering. And we by default can say that unfortunately still majority in this country and neighboring countries suffering. And talking to boss, talking to supervisor is a tricky when this supervisor is not from Ukraine. And we will discuss a lot of other subjects which they might take into consideration and apply. Thank you so much.